In a bold move, Armenia's parliament has voted to ratify the Rome Statute, a treaty which Armenia signed way back in 1999, then forgot to ratify. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan sees this as a shield for Armenia's security, but his critics argue this ratification might be futile since neither neighboring Turkey nor Azerbaijan have ratified the treaty. Meanwhile, Moscow views the move with clear disdain, calling it a hostile act. But with all this tension, the pressing question is, what does Armenia stand to gain from this ratification? What implications does this have for Armenia's relationships with her neighbors? And what even be the Rome Statute anyway? Long ago in 1998, when the world had Backstreet Boys and NSYNC on repeat, some countries thought enough is enough. So they gathered in Rome and asked the question, how do we hold people accountable for the world's most heinous crimes? Okay, the boy band thing might have been a coincidence, but I'll let you be the judge on that one. But anyway, they came up with the Rome Statute and founded the International Criminal Court, or the ICC. Its purpose, to create an international court tasked with prosecuting individuals, not countries, but individuals responsible for the world's most egregious offenses. But what are these offenses, you ask? They fall into four main categories. Number 1. Genocide, the deliberate and systematic extermination of a racial or ethnic group. We're talking about actions aimed at wiping out an entire group of people. Number 2. War crimes, from torturing prisoners of war to the intentional targeting of civilians. These actions aren't just unsavory war tactics, they're downright illegal on an international scale. Number 3. Crimes against humanity. This isn't about one-off atrocities, but widespread or systematic attacks on civilians. Think large-scale torture, extermination, or forced disappearances. Number 4. The crime of aggression. This involves a country's leaders launching wars or invasions that violate international law. It's a charge ensuring that political leaders think twice before rolling tanks across borders. Now, some of you might be thinking, isn't that what the United Nations are for? And they don't seem to be very effective. It's a valid point. The UN does host the International Court of Justice, but that's primarily for disputes between states, not for prosecuting individuals. And while the UN has a plethora of human rights mechanisms, such as the Human Rights Committee, they don't directly prosecute individuals either. They can call out human rights abuses and recommend actions, but they don't put individuals on trial. That's where the ICC comes in. Unlike UN resolutions, the Rome Statute specifically established the ICC to ensure individuals, not just states, can be held accountable for their crimes. But don't countries have their own courts for that? Well, the ICC is a court of last resort. It intervenes when national courts are either unable or unwilling to prosecute criminals. It's a safety net ensuring that the gravest of crimes don't go unpunished. Yet, it's essential to know the ICC is not omnipotent. Its jurisdiction is primarily over crimes committed in countries that have signed and ratified the treaty, or by citizens of those countries. And here's the kicker. It only has the power over crimes committed after a country has joined the treaty. So, if a country joins today, its crimes of yesterday are out of the ICC's reach, with very rare exceptions. With that stage set, let's zoom in on Armenia, who is currently grappling with the weight of this decision. What does all this mean for them, and why is the ratification of the Rome Statute making headlines? By ratifying the Rome Statute, Armenia would be strategically positioning itself to bring cases to the ICC for crimes committed either on its soil or by its citizens. But here's the catch: only for crimes that happen after they've ratified the treaty. What about the horrific crimes in Artsakh from the past few years? Many Armenians would rightfully want those crimes to be prosecuted, but the ICC generally doesn't deal with crimes committed before a country's ratification. Yet, joining the ICC does carry real weight. For one, it can serve as a deterrent. Let's bring this down to earth with an example. Picture Haik, an Armenian farmer who lives near the border. He's not a soldier, he's not involved in politics, he's just trying to make a living off the land, like his family has for generations. However, he's been finding it increasingly difficult to do so because his farm has come under fire more than once from across the border. These aren't stray bullets, these are targeted shots intended to disrupt his way of life, an act that could potentially be categorized as a war crime under the Rome Statute. Now, in a world where Armenia is a part of the ICC, Haik would have more than just his government standing up for him. He would have the international legal community offering an extra avenue for justice. So, ratifying the Rome Statute isn't just a political move. It's a promise of protection and accountability that extends to every Armenian citizen, from a high-ranking official in Yerevan to a farmer like Haik. So even though the ICC may not be able to prosecute past crimes, if Azerbaijan knows Armenia has the ICC on its corner, they might think twice before committing future atrocities. Before we dive into the wider geopolitical implications of this ratification, let's take a detour to neighboring Azerbaijan. Their relationship with the ICC is a tale of its own, and it has significant implications for Armenia's own quest for justice. First and foremost, Azerbaijan has not ratified the Rome Statute, which limits the ICC's jurisdiction over crimes committed by Azerbaijani nationals on Azerbaijani soil. Without Azerbaijan's ratification, the ICC's jurisdiction is limited to crimes that occur on Armenian territory. The one wildcard here is the United Nations Security Council. They could potentially intervene and refer a situation to the ICC, but given the geopolitical interests at play in the UN, that's a big if. So, why hasn't the EU's so-called reliable energy partner hopped on the ICC bandwagon? There could be a plethora of reasons. Here are 4 that seem obvious to me. Number 1. Ongoing conflict with Armenia. With Azerbaijan's track record of committing atrocious crimes, especially during their recent aggressions in Artsakh, the nation might perceive joining the ICC as opening a Pandora's box of potential legal repercussions. Number 2. Domestic human rights concerns. Ratifying the Rome Statute could shine a spotlight on Azerbaijan's human rights abuses on its own citizens at home. Number 3. Ideological alignments. Many authoritarian countries with similarly contentious records on human rights, such as Russia, Turkey, and China, haven't ratified the Rome Statute for obvious reasons. Aligning with these non-ICC states might offer Azerbaijan a sense of camaraderie with a collective resisting Western-led international norms. And finally, a perceived lack of benefit. Azerbaijan might not see any tangible benefits to joining. If the perceived risks outweigh the potential rewards, staying out of the ICC's grasp might seem like the wiser move. Or simply put, why would they? As Azerbaijan steers clear of the ICC's reach, let's now look at how Armenia's ratification could redefine its position on the world stage. Armenia's decision to back the ICC speaks volumes about its commitment to human rights and its quest for justice, even in the face of formidable challenges. Most notably, the ICC has issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin for the illegal deportations of children from the occupied regions of Ukraine. This means that if Putin were to visit, Armenia would be legally obliged to arrest him. Such an implication, coupled with recent events like Russia's compliance during Azerbaijan's invasion of Artsakh and Armenia's joint military drills with the US, have strained relations, leading the Kremlin to repeatedly warn Armenia against ratifying the Rome Statute. Now you might be asking, why would Armenia take such a risk with Russia? That's where the geopolitical plot thickens. On the same day the Armenian parliament greenlighted the Rome Statute, France became the first NATO member to announce its decision to supply Armenia with weapons. Was France's announcement a mere coincidence or a sign of strengthening ties between Armenia and Western powers? Is France sliding into Armenia's DMs with some sexy military hardware? Either way, Armenia's strategic choices highlight its proactive stance in geopolitics. It's evident that Armenia isn't just sitting back and witnessing its fate, but actively molding it.